Good morning. Welcome to Bloomerang Academy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so glad you could join us to talk about 10 donor types to communicate with during COVID-19. Joining us today are Chris Painchod, one of our senior account executives, and Heidi Atkinson, our product analyst.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Thank you so much again for joining us. I hope everyone is doing well and at least getting a little bit of sunshine like we are here in Indianapolis. I would like to show the 10 donor types that we'll be taking a look at today. Chris and Heidi are going to be walking us through about half of the reports that we're taking a look at today. However, all of these reports are available as a recording. So if there's any reports here that you're really interested in and we don't get to them today, you have that recording as well that you can follow. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Heidi.
Great. Thank you very much, Diana. And I don't know how special it is to have me on a webinar, but I don't do it very often, so it's special for me. Thanks very much. I'd like to congratulate everybody who's here in the room today. And I think at last count, we had around 250 of you register for this. So I'm pleased to see that kind of response for this. I congratulate you for deciding to continue to pursue your income stream from fundraising during this time of crisis. This is certainly no time to pull the sheets over your head and hope it goes away. We need more than ever, I think we need to maintain our relationships with our donors, and we certainly can't afford to stop bringing in revenue despite all the craziness. I've heard a lot of customers tell me that they're afraid to ask for money right now because they think it might be perceived as being in poor taste, which, if you do it correctly, couldn't be further from the truth. If you love somebody, you want to be able to help them in their time of greatest need. And I think our donors feel that way about us. Your donors care about you. They want you to succeed. They don't want to leave you hanging. They want to help you. And I think they need to hear from us. They need to hear what we're doing. How are we responding to this crisis? And besides, they're all stuck indoors like we are, so they're probably happy to hear from you. We're going to see, I've seen a lot of good examples, and I don't have them ready to show you today. I've been kind of gathering them together as they come in. But as a follow-up, we'll try to share some examples of some particularly effective appeals that I've already seen from nonprofits who are asking me for money, as well as some that my coworkers have seen come in that are in great taste and really make a compelling case for why a donor should be giving to me or to my organization right now. So at Bloomerang, as you know, we preach engagement, donor engagement, we preach segmentation, and we preach personalization of the message. And that's what this is going to be all about today, on how to zero in on some specific donor segments and approach them as if they're real people and not just statistical records in our database. One thing we're going to talk about in particular is the importance of email. I think print shops have been deemed, for the most part, non-essential businesses, so it's pretty hard to do business with a print shop. And we also need to be nimble anyway and get things out urgently. So email is going to be particularly important to us in the near term. And I'm talking about mass email and also personal one-off emails that we send from our personal account. And Heidi will have a lot to say about that a little bit later in the show. We're also going to talk about the importance of the telephone. A very few of you in the room may be old enough to remember when we used to use the telephone mainly for talking to people. And Heidi's going to have some great examples of how we can, on these donor types, and how to reach out with very personalized messages. Now, we've got the 10 donor types that you can see on the screen. I think we're going to prioritize them in order that we think they'll be the most useful and the most doable. So we'll start with number one and get as far as we can. And Heidi's going to give you a lot of specific how-tos on how to create these segments, but I don't want you to feel locked into doing things exactly the way that we tell you. I want you to apply your own circumstances and your own imagination to how these tools and how these reports would fit, considering the nuance of your particular organization. So with that, I'm going to hand the baton to Heidi, who's going to take us through our first donor segment. Heidi?
Hi, thanks, Chris. Great setup. Yeah, I wanted to emphasize, we've repeated a couple times. This list is based off a recent post that's on the Bloomerang blog. So that's where we got these 10 items. Chris and I, looking at it, realized we didn't have time to really discuss all 10 in the depth they deserve. So we were planning on starting with these 5. Based on the poll results, it looks like you're all really excited about hearing about long-term loyal donors. I'm going to start with the top donors just to kind of show you some reporting tips and tricks, but we'll definitely make sure we're spending enough time there. If there's anything you're not seeing, I'm about to hop into my database and show you how to do these. If there's anything that I rush through or skim over, feel free to chat it in. Diana's going to be watching all of those, and she'll kind of be providing various answers. If there's anything we don't get to today, I want to emphasize as well, we will be sharing these slides as well afterwards. There is one slide in the deck for each of the reports with a little background information about it and a video created by me or one of the support team members that really dives into that report in a little bit more depth. So anything we don't reach today, you can always come back and look at. Or if we do talk about something today and you don't want to watch the entire webinar again to do it, just go to that part of the slides and you'll kind of be able to skip straight there. That said, let's, like I said, I did plan on starting with the top donor reports, and I'll stick with that plan right now. Let me hop over into my database.
And I might add, Heidi, while you're going there, that we're going to give you a couple of sample definitions for what a top donor is. So feel free to use your own definition and apply what Heidi's going to tell you accordingly. You don't have to use our example of a top donor. This will give you an example of how to get to a top donor report based on the definition we're going to share. So, but again, you know your environment better than we do, so feel free to use your own creativity on applying this to your situation.
Yeah, great point. One of my goals today in showing you how to do this in Bloomerang is not just how to build this specific report that I'm building, but also to hopefully introduce you to a couple tips and tricks within our reporting tools that you can use throughout your reporting in Bloomerang. So hopefully you'll see something new today, something that sparks a little bit of thought. I just came over here to my report section in Bloomerang, and to get started, I'm just going to start from scratch to build this top donor report. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this, so I won't go too slowly here. We're just going to click New Report. I'll come back to the templates later, but for now, we're going to build our report from scratch. Now, since this is a top donor report, and in general today we're pulling a list of people to talk to, I'm going to stick with constituent reports. Transaction reports are great if you want one row for every gift, if you want to see a lot of details about the gifts, but I'm going to be sticking with constituent reports. I want one row per person today, and I'll probably be showing you how to look at their record and explore that further from the report. So let me first of all just give this report a name. Let's call that 2020. I sometimes forget what year it is, and I'm just going to save that and keep going so that if I pause, I can come back to this. So this is going to be our top donor reports 2020. A couple of things I'm just going to kind of tidy up as we get started. I just want to see my individual donors right now. If I have a foundation who's, sent me a lot of money, I don't want to see them at this moment. I'm kind of preparing a call list or a contact list of people to reach out to. So I'm just going to filter for type is individual. Now type is a built-in field in every Bloomerang database. And this is going to narrow the results. I have 335 people in my database. This is going to limit those to just my individual constituents. So I'm down to 249. The next kind of housekeeping thing I wanted to do in preparation is how I'm handling households. You'll notice right now I've got a couple people in my fake database. Mallory and Sterling are in a household together, but they're both individuals. I only want to see them as one row in this report. I'm just going to call their family one time. So to do that, I'm going to take this green constituent and I'm going to toggle it to household. Now this is a really useful trick. If you're new to Bloomerang, a lot of people don't realize you can click on the green words in reports. This isn't kicking people out of the report. If you were a single person, you're still there. It's not acting like the rest of the filters. All it's doing is it's taking everybody who's in a household together and grouping them into one row. So you're seeing here now, Mallory and Sterling only show up as one row in my report. That was a basic setup thing I wanted to do just in general. Now because I want to see my top donors, I'm just going to real simply here add a column to my report for their lifetime revenue. Now this is a built-in column in Bloomerang. It's available in all constituent reports and it's a really quick and dirty way to just get a list of everybody's lifetime revenue. That's going to be like their pledge payments, their recurring gift payments, and their straight up donations. It's not including the overall pledge if it hasn't been paid off. It's not including soft credits. It's just money that they've given you that's passed into your bank account. I'm going to then sort my list. So I'm going to click these little white arrows. The first click sorts it in an unhelpful way where I'm getting my smallest donors on top. So I'm just going to click it a second time and I'm getting my largest donors on top. And then just a couple more tips and tricks about report preparation. I don't like that I can't see their name here. And because I'm planning on reaching out and contacting these people, I don't really need to see their address. So I'm just going to click on that row in the title or click on that column. Click delete, and that's just going to drop that column right out of my report. I don't really need all their address information. I've got their email. That's pretty handy. I'm just going to go ahead and add their phone number as well. So I clicked add column up here. I'm clicking phone number, and then I want these are different fields that are on the phone number item in your database. I just want the number itself to be added to this report. You'll notice this is going to be their primary phone number. You could change that if you only wanted to see mobile phone numbers, for example. Primary works for me for today. And then I kind of want that to be next to the email address. So I'm just going to click this column and drag it over here. So now I've got their name, email, phone. I know I've got their contact information, and they're all sorted by lifetime revenue. Now, Chris, like you said, this definition of lifetime revenue might not be what top donor means to you. I want to show you another variation that we've seen quite a few people using. For example, maybe these people haven't been giving for years. It's just when they gave, they were extremely generous. So let me just add their recent giving. So we're going to use a bit of a special column here. So I'm going to say how many transactions they've given in the last 2 years and use that as my definition of top donors. So I'm going to use this special has transactions column. And it's going to let me set up whatever filters I need to show, instead of just lifetime revenue, a specific kind of revenue. So I want to see the sum of the transactions. You could see, like it shows here, a min, max, average, or just the count of transactions that meet our criteria. But I'm just going to stick with the sum of the amount of the transactions. And then I don't want all their transactions. We just kind of pulled that already. I just want transactions from the last 2 years. So to do that, I'm going to narrow this based on the transaction date. Created date is what date you put it in the system. Date is what day you record this in books. You know, if you put it in the system on January 1st, but they gave you the gift on December 31st, you're going to want that gift date to match what the donor thinks they gave you. And then I'm just going to narrow my results a little bit further to be between, what did I say, the last 2 years? Let's just say January 1st, 2018 to today. And I don't need to type in a second date here. This is going to work just fine. So now I essentially am adding a column to my report, and it's going to show me the amount of all their transactions they've given since January 1st, 2018. And as you see, like, this person was showing up great on lifetime revenue, but hasn't really given me any gifts in the last couple of years. So I'm just going to resort my report now. So I'm only seeing, based on their recent giving history, who my top donors are. And that changed up who my top donors are in my database. You can be really creative and flexible with this. It can accommodate a lot of different needs for your organization if you wanted to include or exclude event ticket purchases, for example. And then the last kind of report preparation trick I wanted to show you here is this name now is kind of vague, sum of amount of transactions. If I just click on that, you see how this is white now? I'm just going to say 2 years. Call it whatever you like. You can rename any column in any of your reports by doing that trick. I'm just going to save this real quick here and take a little pause. Once again, if I'm skipping over anything, moving too fast, just chat it in, and Diana's monitoring that. So I'm running through this in a little bit more depth right here up front, but as we get into our next few reports, I'll just kind of copy this report and we'll move from there. So one thing I wanted to pause kind of here before we move on to the next report is, what are you going to do once you've got this list? A little trick I've always liked is that when I'm in a report, I can go to the records. I'm going to right click on the row, and then I can open it in a new tab. And I always like to just go down and open the top couple. And I essentially now have kind of a to-do list for myself of people to follow up with. So I'm going to like go through them one by one, review their history. What have we done? We haven't reached out to this person recently, so maybe a phone call would be appropriate. See if they've got any contact information. This household has a phone number, so I can just ring them up, and then whoever I get on the phone, I can open their record and record that transaction or interaction. And then I can just kind of close that tab, go down my list, rinse and repeat. I can call this person, enter that interaction on their timeline. Same thing with this person. They don't have a phone or an email, so I might just kind of flag them for later. And then this one, I've got an email as well. So if you click on their email address in Bloomerang, that's obviously my work email. It will open up in your browser's email. If this part isn't working, feel free to chat in with our support team. It is a browser-specific setting, so not something we can like handle for you in Bloomerang. And then if you send them an email, you see it's automatically doing the BCC to Bloomerang. So once you send them that email, it'll automatically go back into Bloomerang and be recorded on their timeline. Chris, if I could pause here, I think one of the biggest things we've been hearing from people, there's a little bit of how do I do this, but there's a lot of what am I supposed to say? Can you weigh in on that?
Yes, thanks. So the purpose of segmenting is so that we can get really on message with those segments and address these individuals in a way that's meaningful to them. So right now, we're looking at top donors. And again, as Heidi said, you can use variations on the definition of a top donor, but these are your best, most valuable, at least dollar-wise, to the organization. So when you approach them with your message, you want the message to address that. Dear, hi Albus, Minerva, you're one of our best top donors, and we really appreciate that. And here's what we're doing, and here's why we need you. So the message, it's the big picture message may not vary a whole lot from segment to segment, but I think at some you need to make it obvious that you know who they are when you're reaching out. And in this case, we're reaching out to our top donors, and they need to know that we know that when we reach out. Does that answer the question, Heidi?
Yeah, thanks. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and close these tabs, save this, and I'm going to move on to what it sounds like everybody's most excited to see, how to report on your longtime loyal donors. So I'm just going to save this report and go to my reports list. I already got those columns set up really nicely. I removed the address and stuff. So I'm going to just copy that report. You can only copy reports from the report list. Over here, there's this little blue arrow you see a lot of places around in the database. And from here, you can copy that existing report. So that's going to keep all my filters and all my columns so I don't have to set them up again. This is really handy when you've done some customization with your columns and they're set up exactly the way you want them to be. I'm going to go ahead and rename this report Loyal Donors. And we're going to save that and keep editing. So in the top donors report, it was really simple, honestly. We didn't really filter very much. We just sorted in a very specific way. So one thing you can do, and I've seen a lot of people do, is add several columns to the reports, like how much did they give me this year? How much did they give me last year? And then you kind of review it by hand. I want to show you how we would pull a list of people who have been giving to you consistently for the past 3 years. So in order to narrow my results further, remember this is all my individual donors in my database, whether they've given consistently, it's just all my constituents. So I'm going to use this green and filter. Just a quick tip, and filters will always narrow your search results. If you're adding an and, you're going to see fewer people. Or filters will expand your search results. So you might say, I want to see individuals or I want to see organizations, and then you'd be seeing more people. Today I'm going to be sticking with and filters, but that's just a quick little description of what the difference between those is. So let's start by just narrowing this down to people who gave in 2019. To do that, I'm going to add a filter for their transaction, their giving history. Anytime in your report filters you're seeing this has, cute little picture, something, it's going to open up a whole new set of options for what you can filter on. So the initial set is constituent-based data. What constituent custom fields do you have, what constituent type they are. By clicking has transactions here, I'm going to be opening up a whole range of filters based on their giving history. If I just stopped here with has any transactions, I'd be narrowing my results to somebody who had at least one transaction in the database. I want specifically transactions from 2019 though. So I'm going to click on this black transactions with the little down arrow, and I'm going to switch that over to specific transactions, and now you're seeing I get those transaction filters I was just mentioning. This is the same thing we saw when we were building the special column over here. I'm just taking it a little bit more slowly here just to kind of drive that knowledge home. Basically, we're going to do the exact same thing though, where the transaction date, that gift date, and we're going to say is during 2019. So I'm going to say 1/1/2019 and 12/31/2019. So now as I click OK, it's going to kind of set these transactions in place and update my results. And you see that really dropped off dramatically. I've got 19 people left in my household who gave a gift in 2019. If this was really you, if you were the one doing this, you might say, hey, 19 is a reasonable number. I'm just going to start there. I have a demo database that doesn't have a lot of information in it. So let's continue to narrow the results because you really want to focus on your most consistent donors. So this is my 2019 filter. I'm just going to do the same thing to say, and they gave me a gift in 2018. I want to see the people who've been loyally giving 2 consecutive years in a row. It's honestly the exact same filter, has transactions, specific transactions, where the transaction date, and we're going to say is in 2018. And you can keep repeating this to your heart's content. I'm just going to show you 3 years right now because it's the exact same steps. I've seen some customers who really want that kind of like 10-year loyal. It really depends on your donor base and how many people you need to filter this list down to in order to do the communication you want. You see my 2018-19, I'm down to just 3 people. And I'm just going to add a third one for 2017. So Chris, what would you say differently to your loyal donors, or what kind of customization would you want to be doing with this messaging?
Well, again, excuse me, again, we want to make sure they know that we know who they are. So if you're looking at a 3-year loyal donor list, like the one that Heidi's building, you want to tell them that you appreciate how loyal they've been for these last. You may not be able to specify the exact number of years because hopefully some of them are 3-year plus givers, but putting that as part of the message is how you take advantage of creating the segment. So thank you for your consistency. You can mention, if you create a column here for their 3-year giving history, in addition to the 2-year column that you see, you can thank them for the specific amount of money that they've given you in the last 3 years. So it's very easy using data in Bloomerang to get very personal and on message with each person in your segment.
That was a good point of like really delving into it. I think if you're doing really personal outreach, right, like we were just saying, you can just open them up, browse that timeline, see what that history looks like. You can see here 2017, 18, 19, like seems to be giving every year in December, but hasn't heard from me since 2016. So you can kind of delve into that personal history of what that person has been giving like. And you can set that up as columns as well, depending on what your needs are.
Yes, if you're talking to them on the phone or you're sending them a personal email, you can get really specific by evaluating their timeline and making specific reference to their giving pattern and history, as Heidi just pointed out.
Mm-hmm. If you've got any questions, if that wasn't what you were thinking with loyal donors, or you have a different case in mind, feel free to chat it over right now. I'm going to move on to the next variation of this report, but we'll be coming back to your questions in just a bit. So I'm going to just save this, go to my reports list, and I'm going to create a quick copy of that report to do our third type of donor. So this was, remember, individual donors. I wanted to just kind of real quickly do the variation of what about your loyal organization donors. This change is extremely easy to do. All we're going to do is take that first filter we added in where we said, I only want to see my individuals, and we're just going to flip that to organizations. So now we've effectively made 2 reports in one, right? We've got our loyal individual donors reports and our loyal organization donors reports. Organization donors are really an interesting theme right now because so many businesses are being affected by the coronavirus. What would you do with an organization donor? Oh, sorry, Chris. What would you do with your communication plans for organizations versus for individuals?
Oh, I thought we agreed we're going to call each other by name when we were.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, to that point, I'd like to thank you all for trusting us to deliver this quickly prepared and barely rehearsed presentation. I think you'll find it valuable nonetheless. But so companies, and these, I think you'll need to be very specific as you follow up with them and how you follow up with them. Different businesses are going to be affected in different ways. A lot of restaurants are partially open. Some non-essential businesses are completely closed. So everybody's going to have a unique situation. And depending upon your relationship with the organization, you might want to be the one to call your contact there or the CEO, or maybe in certain cases, it might be better for a board member to reach out and communicate with them. So I think you're going to have fewer organization donors typically than individual donors. And I think you'll need to be even more personal in the way that you approach them. And you'll need to decide that on a case-by-case basis. But don't rule out board members as part of your arsenal in terms of your donor communication.
Yeah, I love that you brought up board members there. I've been kind of showing you, like, assuming you're the one pulling the list and going through and contacting everyone. But if you've got volunteers like board members or other kinds of fundraising volunteers, or even other staff members who are kind of sharing the load right now, one quick way that you can be using Bloomerang to help with that is after you go through that list and you open these people up, instead of you contacting them, you can really easily just go ahead and create a task. Assuming those volunteers and board members have users in your database, you can say, hey, Emily, can you reach out to ABC and see how they're doing? Assign that task to Emily, and she's going to get an email in her inbox saying what you just asked her to do. If she just replies to that email and says, great, I did it, they said that they're in a rough spot right now, but we came up with an idea for how we could work together, then that entire conversation history gets really easily saved onto their timeline using the task functionality. So it is a good way to kind of like share the work and make sure the right person is following up with different constituents. Let me move on then. So those were our 2 loyal donor reports, loyal individuals, loyal organizations. The 4th report we wanted to make was showing you monthly donors. And I actually have 2 different ways I want to show you to report on this depending on how your database is set up. To get started, because I like the columns we set up in our top donors report, I'm just going to copy that one again. No need to recreate the wheel with all my columns. And I'm just going to call this monthly donors. Now, this first way, I'm going to make the assumption that you are using the Bloomerang functionality to track recurring gift schedules. That's a really nice feature. It kind of serves as a kind of header over the entire giving plan of this donor is planning on giving $10 a month until this date or in perpetuity. I'll show you another variation later in case you're not using that functionality, but if you are, it makes this extremely easy. So all you have to do with your report is we're going to base this on their transaction history again. Has any transactions, we'll do specific, and that's going to be based on the transaction type. So like constituent type, this is a built-in Bloomerang field in every database, and the different types of transactions in every database are donation, which is those one-off gifts, pledges and pledge payments, recurring gift schedules and recurring gift payments, and soft credits. So for this, to see who my monthly donors are, I'm really just going to grab, they've got a recurring gift schedule on their timeline. Now I know that some of my monthly donors have stopped giving, you know, we've been running this monthly donor program for a while, so I'm just going to add another filter here to limit those results a little bit further to say that their recurring gift schedule is still open. So like we were seeing earlier, this is kind of a nested set of filters within the overall transaction filters. Recurring donation schedules and payments will open up details about what kinds of recurring gift schedules do I want to be considering right now. And I only want the ones where the status is active, and I might include overdue too, but not the people who finished their monthly giving and asked for it to stop. I just want my current monthly donors. So this is really all the filters we need then for identifying our monthly donors, that they have a recurring gift schedule and that it's open. And this should narrow my results. Okay, I've got 9 current recurring donors, and it's the same steps as what we were doing with everyone else. You can just save this report, open up those records, and reach out to each of them to see how things are going. You might want to look at that recurring gift schedule on their timeline, see what the plan was, see how the payments have been going so that you go into that call prepared. But you can do that, once again, all from right here. Now this is a really nested filter. It's kind of hard to see from this high level. Let me go ahead and save this real quick and just kind of walk through it again. Amy, you just asked, I think you're talking about this report for showing them again, and I definitely understand that. So what I did here is I did the and filter, and then we looked for has transactions. We did specific transactions, which is that black button, and then within the transaction filters, so this matches what you see when you build transaction-based reports. It's that kind of all just buried in here. The filters I did, let me just clear those out real quick. So the first one I did was the transaction type. Is it a donation? Is this soft credit? And I said I really only care about recurring gift schedules right now. You could do payments too. I'm just picking schedules because they might have a schedule but have not made a payment yet. Assuming you don't have too many of those, this choice doesn't make too big of a difference. So I'm saying they've got a recurring gift schedule. And then the second thing I added, which is just kind of a nice little touch for myself, if you're looking at these records by hand anyway, you probably don't need to worry about this. You're going to notice that they've stopped making recurring gifts before you call. But this part I said recurring. So there's a set of nested filters under transactions for specific details that are only relevant to recurring gifts. And here, the kinds of information you could see here is like information about that recurring gift schedule, about the installments for the recurring gifts. So there's a lot of recurring gift specific information under here. The field I picked was the schedule status. So that is saying that that schedule is either active, closed, or overdue. And I picked active and overdue. There's so many things you can filter based on. I kind of have fun exploring them. If you're ever stuck saying like, hey, I'm getting results in my report that I didn't want, and you can kind of like identify why you didn't want them in the report, or you're not seeing somebody in the report that you did want, and you can kind of figure out what are the things I'm kicking out and what does it say about that record. That always helps with identifying whether you should be using the filters or not. I just wanted to show these two right now just to be like extra advanced for people who everything else might be like up their wheelhouse already. Thanks for asking that. Glad to show it again. So this is how I would pull my monthly donors if I'm using recurring gift schedules in Bloomerang, which I highly recommend doing. Let me go ahead and make a different version of this report though. I've been talking with a couple people who've expressed that they, for various reasons, maybe they just weren't aware of it, maybe they just haven't gotten around to it yet, maybe their old data from before they were using Bloomerang wasn't set up in a way that made it easy to tell. But instead of using that recurring gift schedule item and calling those recurring gifts in Bloomerang, they kind of enter everything as just a donation. And so the only way they have to figure out if they have a monthly donor is to say, do I have any donors who gave me 12 gifts in 2019? I would say that those are probably my monthly donors. If that sounds like you can still report on this. I love the recurring gift schedules. I think they're easier to use, but you can still get a list of people based on how many gifts they're giving. So I'm still going to do transaction filters here. We're very giving based today. And what I'm going to change here is the green has any. We haven't really changed this much today, but there's a lot of options here. You could base your filters off whether they have any gifts, whether they have no gifts, whether their first gift is a certain kind of gift or not. What I wanted to do for this is, let's stick with that example. If they've got at least 12 transactions in 2019, so we'll just say within that specific date range. Once again, we're going to do between I'm sticking with 2019 right now because it's so recent. I mean, we're getting into March. You might want to just say within the last 12 months or within the last year. Those are easy filters too. Nothing wrong with doing it that way. But here I'm essentially saying, I don't know how I recorded those transactions. I probably put them in as just regular donations. Maybe I was using the import tool. Maybe I converted them. Maybe I didn't know about the recurring gifts. But it's in there. That monthly giving history is in there. So this is just a real easy way to say they've got 12 transactions in that date range. These are probably my monthly donors. And I made sure I had somebody in my database who looked like that, just so you could kind of see how those filters would work. So that's my second variation of how I would pull a monthly donor report if I'm not using recurring gift schedules in Bloomerang. If we've got any questions about that before we move on. Feel free to chat those in. All
Heidi,
right.
it's Chris. I wanted to point out that with monthly donors in particular, you've got some interesting choices to make on your messaging. I've heard some customers express concern that what if I reach out to a monthly donor and I remind them that they were even giving a monthly gift and budgets are tight in their households, am I going to chase them away? So you've got that sort of outside thing to take into account. So you want to tread lightly. But on the other side, a monthly donor might be somebody, assuming that their budget isn't too pinched, this would be a good time to possibly even ask for a donation above and beyond what they'd be giving monthly as a sort of a crisis donation. So there might be an additional revenue opportunity for you there, even though they're already regular givers.
Mm-hmm. I think what we're seeing a lot of is, of those who can, there's a lot of desire to help and not being sure how to help. Like, who needs my help? How is this going to make a difference? and just kind of like showing them the path of the connection between your organization and making a difference, which is what you guys are all experts at to begin with. All right, I'm really excited for this 5th report that I wanted to show you. I know I did a couple duplicate reports in there, but I really wanted to make sure that we had some time today to look at new donors. Before I actually dig into the report for that, I do want to flag, a lot of you have probably heard this from us, we just recently released this new element on our dashboard for first-time donor calls. If you do have people on there, there's a little link to see the full report, which would be anybody who could have qualified, but we're only showing 5 at a time on that because of space. If you don't have any people showing up right there right now, you don't have that button though. So a couple things I'm going to be doing differently today from this is the first-time donor calls widget is really meant to be kind of in reaction to that first gift, very timely and really oriented towards hopping on a phone call. So we're only showing first-time donors from the last couple of business days and only people who have a phone number and are okay being called. Now, if they don't have a phone number, but they've provided an email, which is really common with online gifts, you wouldn't be seeing them here since you can't call them, but the report I'm going to be showing you should be flexible enough that whatever your situation is, you can pull kind of a larger history of who your freshest donors are. So once again, we're going to hop over to reports because I'm a really big fan of it. I'm going to copy that Top Donor 2020 report and open that copy up. And we're just going to call this our new donors. Now, normally we were calling this kind of new donors within the last 90 days. That happens to overlap kind of awkwardly with Giving Tuesday. And I do want to include my Giving Tuesday donors from last year. So what I'm aiming for in this report is just anybody whose first gift was December 1st or later. As you guys can probably guess, we're just going to do has transactions. I've been doing this a lot today, and we're going to use that green has any and change it to first, which I kind of hinted at before. So we're just going to say the first one transaction is specifically, and then like everything else we've been doing, it's just that date range is, in my case right now, I'm going to say after 12/1, 2019. Feel free to, whatever time period you're considering your new donors to be, if it's within the last year, if it's within the last month, this is completely up to you of what kind of scope you're defining new donors to be. That's all I'm planning on doing with this one. I do want to point out though, like we were saying in other places, if you need to kick out people whose maybe gift was because they bought an event ticket and you don't really consider them to be a engageable donor that you would want to be reaching out and working on your relationship with, you can add more filters here, kick whoever you want out, make these rules be whatever you need them to be. But essentially that first is really the cool little trick I wanted to make sure to show you for this. So this is going to be showing you all of the people in my database whose first gift was since December 1st last year. And then I'm just going to add some columns here for their first gift date and amount. These are built-in columns in every constituent report in Bloomerang. And we also have added a new little column here for has first-time donor thank you call. That is kind of synced with that part you just saw on the dashboard. So did they get a call within a really short time period after their first gift? If you call them like a year later, it doesn't count as the first-time donor thank you call. So there is a kind of window of opportunity there. But I just want to add those columns right here because it's a fake database. I haven't called any of my new donors, but just a little bit extra information. Chris, turning it over to you real quickly here. What would you say to a new donor? Like they just reached out to you. They just started this relationship.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the first-time donor call list that Heidi just showed you on the dashboard is underscores Bloomerang's contention that the best way to retain a new donor is to reach out in a personal way ASAP. And in this case, I think I would say, thanks for joining our donor family. You couldn't have joined at a better time because we really need you now, and build on that. I think that the timeliness of their support would be a great thing to underscore as you're trying to cement the retention relationship with a new donor.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. These were kind of the main reports we wanted to make sure to cover. They kind of are the most universal across different nonprofits. I wanted to make sure too, we've been really focused on individualized outreach, like if you've got time, if you're emailing, if you're calling. I know that some of your databases are not as tiny as mine, and you're really looking for more of ways to kind of get a message out to a larger group of people. So we did want to take a little bit of time today and touch on how you could use what we just did here in the mass email functionality in Bloomerang. If there's any reports we haven't gotten to or anything I skipped in these that you really want to see, chat it in. We'll see how much time we have for questions at the end. Let me then go over to how you can take these lists and kind of do more of a mass communication with them. Letters right now are a little bit unpopular. Looking at the data, not as many Bloomerang customers are running letters. I don't know if it's because you don't have printers at your home offices, but we are seeing a lot of people kind of switching over to using emails. So I'm going to click on my email template section, and I wanted to keep this kind of simple. One thing I really wanted to flag is just today we added a bunch of new email templates. So if you haven't gone into your email builder yet this morning, when you go and click new, in addition to kind of the templates that we had, which we're calling starter templates, we also have just added some COVID-19 themed templates around different messaging that we're seeing people wanting to communicate to their constituent base. So I'm just going to hop into those real quickly. And Chris, I know you've been seeing some really good stuff, so I'm going to pass it over to you in just a second. But we've got templates in here now for just check-in templates. How are you doing? Kind of a chat with our executive director theme, an update, what are we doing? I've personally been really appreciating getting those from different organizations that it's really we're cleaning our kitchen at the shelter more thoroughly. We had to close down the entry so that we couldn't process in-kind donations the same way. Just anything you just kind of be vulnerable about. This is how it's affecting us. An update email. Some organizations, some of you are actually needing more volunteers in different ways. So we've got a call for volunteers template, how to maybe ask those volunteers to be donors. And one of those reports that we haven't gotten to is how to pull a list of volunteers in your database. A lot of you have had to postpone or cancel your events. So we've got a kind of little postpone event template here. Some of you can't continue to provide your services, so we've got a closing the office and other ways to help template idea. And I think this is the same one I just said, right? Yeah, volunteer to a donor. Oh, for volunteers who are current donors, that makes sense. So those are some of the things that we wanted to share that we were kind of collecting from the community and just got up this morning. Chris, how does this line up with kind of what you're seeing coming out from the fundraising world right now?
Yes, a couple of key points. I first of all wanted to point out that I'm watching the chat here, and a Cynthia Batista just chatted in that she's already found these templates and already used them and has already gotten a great response on them. So congratulations on maybe being our first customer to actually deploy that, and congratulations on getting those good results. The emails that I've seen from different organizations, the message revolves mainly around the theme of, hey, we've been doing really important work in our community. We're saving animals, we're feeding children, we're sheltering the homeless. We were always doing this important work, and just because we have the pandemic doesn't mean that the need stops. We're still delivering our services, and we need you more than ever to make sure that we can continue that. It's not a poor mouth kind of a thing. It's appealing to somebody who loves you to tell them how much you need them so that you can continue to pursue your mission. That's all of the great emails that I have seen so far from different customers are sort of revolving around that theme. I'd like to point out as a something to be careful of, Heidi's been doing a great job of showing you how to create these different reports. When you get to mass email, you want to make sure that you're not emailing people who might appear in multiple segments. And I think Heidi can show you how to exclude those. That if I emailed a bunch of people in my top donor report who also happen to be in my most loyal donor report, I don't want to send them two different messages. So I think Heidi will show you how to make sure you exclude those so you don't send multiple emails to the same people.
Yeah, one of the key points on why you'd create different lists was so that you could say something a little different for each group, like, thank you for your loyalty is not a message you want to be saying to all the groups we pulled today, or, hey, you're new, we need you more than ever, isn't something you want to say to a loyal donor. So let me just pick one of these templates. I'm going to pick the How Are You template just because it's the first one and it's so short and so easy. And I just want to kind of show you how we can carry what we just did in reports into your email templates. So you're going to want to create a new email. You can copy an email as well if you had an existing one. I want to pause here and mention too, we did in November release our new email editor. So if you're not seeing it look kind of like this for your email editing, it means you're still probably making copies from an email that was made under our legacy editor. I highly recommend trying the new email editor, switching to this if you can. All you need to do to access the new version is click new instead of copying an old one. Just wanted to say that out loud. I've been hearing that in a couple webinars of people wondering why their emails didn't look the same as this. All right, so on to filters. So in emails, filters work exactly the same as what we just saw in reports. You can do exactly what we just saw right here. Or if you've been kind of following along, you already made a report and you just want to kind of use that. It's very easy for you to just say, hey, I've got my list. It's floating over here in my reports. How do I send the email to that group of people? So I'm going to show you a new filter that we didn't use yet today, and that is, in Bloomerang terminology, we call it a referenced report. All I'm going to say is I want to send this email to everyone who's in my, I can't type, who's in the constituent report. You can just type report. I remembered that we were making constituent reports, but you don't need to use that. And then it shows you all of the different constituent reports in your database. Oops, scrolled too far. So we can take any of the reports we just did. So let me say my new donors. I want to send it to my new donors. You can just click OK here. If you wanted to kind of copy those filters and maybe finesse them a little bit more, but kind of use that as a template for yourself, you can do that. And if you wanted to remind yourself what the filters in that report were, you can do that. But here's what they were. Go ahead and hide that again. You can copy that, and now instead of it being a reference report, it's essentially kind of a template. Let me go ahead and just walk through that one more time. So here, you can do what I did and search for constituent report. You can also just search for report. Oops, and select your report. So that's one way that you can take everything we just did over in reports, bring it over to your emails, and keep going ahead with your email without having to kind of like have those two tabs open and remember everything, assuming you did the work in one place already. So let's say that you sent that first email to your new donors. You sent an email to your loyal donors. You're on to your third email. You're going to email your monthly donors now. So sorry if I'm clicking around a lot, guys. I do that sometimes. So you're about ready to email your monthly donors. And then, like Chris was saying, you remember, oh, wait, like some of these might be loyal donors. They might have just received that email I sent 5 minutes ago, thanking them for loyalty. I don't want them to get two versions of the same email. So that's really easy too. So we're going to say we want to include everyone who's in the monthly donor report. And then I just want to kick out everyone who was also in the loyal donor report. So you can kind of do this to make sure that like each group's getting a different message. This is one way of doing it. A lot of times, like if you've already sent the email, there's a lot of ways you can achieve this in Bloomerang. I'm sticking with this one right now because the takeaway I wanted to communicate was using referenced reports when you're filtering emails, but you could be saying like they got an interaction on their timeline, they had a specific interaction, or any set of ways of achieving this goal. Let me go ahead and save that and go to my email home. Oop, we're not going to save that. That's a lot of fields to fill in. Are there any questions then about kind of like using your filters in emails and sending mass emails to these different groups, or any call to action kind of questions? Go ahead and chat those in. All right. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Heidi. So veering a little bit away from emails. I know we talked about calls earlier. Chris and Heidi, do you have anything to share if whether or not text or calls might be better? What's your take on texting versus calling donors?
Oh, Chris, that sounds like a great one for you.
Yeah. So the beauty of using Bloomerang as we track donor engagement tells you a lot about the donor and allows you to use the timeline to see what if you have to remind yourself what your relationship looks like, you can see what's going on in the timeline. Texting is a very personal kind of a thing. If you feel that your relationship is such that a text would be appropriate, then you can go with it. I don't know that there's a rule you can follow, but I think it's very subjective. But you know your donors the best, and applying the right message and the right medium to all your donors based upon your relationship will be critical. And frankly, a good test of your fundraising artisanship.
Yeah, I've been talking with a couple of our customers this week about how they handle donor communications and cultivation. And two of them mentioned to me that some of their donors that they have really good relationships with have actually kind of asked, I like texting, let's communicate by text. So for those organizations, texting was kind of a natural follow-up from a preference they'd heard from the donor as part of their kind of really personal conversation that they're having with each other. I feel like I've plugged a couple of our new features today because they were relevant, but one that's really relevant for texting is that yesterday morning we rolled out our mobile app for iOS that does have a nice little quick contact feature. So you can basically say like, hey, I want to contact this person, click a button to text them, type the text message in your app, and then as you wrap that up, it asks, hey, do you want to save that as an interaction? So it kind of stitches those little pieces together for you. If you were already using an iOS phone, an Apple phone, and want to try out the app, want to try out that text, if that's something that sounds like a good fit for your organization, I definitely recommend trying it and letting us know how that goes. Thanks, Diana. I realize we're kind of short on time. Do we have other questions that we want to get to before we run out?
Just a quick question here. Of course, we're showing you these email templates. Is there any way to see the results of those email templates? Are people opening them up? Is it even getting to constituents' inboxes?
Ooh, I don't know if this database, I think this one I actually sent one day. Yeah, so after you've sent an email in Bloomerang, when you go to edit that email, in addition to the design, filter, and details tabs, and this is our old editor, so you're going to see it's kind of that old style of how to design it, there will be a new tracking tab after it's been sent. So each time it was sent, so this email I apparently sent 2 times back in 2016 and last summer. So each time you send that template, if you're changing the words, if you're using the same words but sending it to a different group of people, you get those stats about the deliverability, the open rate, clicks on different things. I hope that answered the question. If it doesn't, just feel free to can always kind of ask us here, or if you think of it afterwards, you can always kind of chat in. The support team is online ready to help out this week.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And remember that you can report on all of this information as well, especially with these emails. You can take a look at the tracking tab. You can run reports on them as well. And actually next week, one of the webinars that we'll be doing for next week is setting up your email campaign or setting up your COVID-19 email campaigns. So we'll delve a little bit deeper into this. I'll let Heidi and Chris wrap up for this topic before I plug the rest of our stuff going on next week.
If you don't mind, I have just one more how-to related thing that I wish we had addressed earlier. This relates way back to the beginning. We talked about top donors and loyal donors, and we looked strictly at their transactions. And a lot of you may have donors who are loyal donors and big donors, but they give through third parties like donor advised funds and or family foundations. So you can chat up customer support, I think would be an effective way to ask them, how do I add this to my report? But I think you definitely want to take into account soft credits when you're looking at top donors and loyal donors, because you may have, some of your best donors may have zero revenue on their account, but might have thousands coming in from donor advised funds or family foundations. So I encourage you to take that into account as you're creating those top donor lists and loyal donor lists. And again, you can chat in customer support anytime if you get stuck on how to make sure you're accounting for that.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one where it's like, it kind of depends on how you've got it set up, but if you know how you've got it set up, I'm almost guaranteeing we can pull it. So like in this example, they don't actually have any revenue, any transactions straight from them to my organization, but they do have revenue coming in through family foundations. So the way I set up this 2-year column was able to capture that, and we can kind of finesse those to whatever your organization needs. Well, we can help you do it because we want you to become like a reporting guru, because we know you can. I just want to emphasize again, I know we didn't get to all of the 10 different donor types, and a lot of you were kind of interested in the peer-to-peer and the social fundraising types of reports. We do have recordings for each report. They will be in the slides that Diana is sharing out, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you again. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you in another Academy class soon.